I was
Okay.
under the impression from our last discussion that you thought you might be getting out of custody tomorrow.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that still scheduled?
Yes, Your Honor.
So what are your plans once you're out? What are your plans?
Well, I had a buddy who was going to pick me up, and then I was probably going to stay with my sister for a while till I figure out a more permanent solution.
Where's your sister live?
She lives in Kentwood.
Uh-huh. What about employment?
Well, as of right now, I'm still on unemployment because of the coronavirus. So,
Does you being in custody affect that?
excuse me?
Do you, because of your incarceration, does that impact your unemployment? Does it stop?
No, I don't believe so.
How long have you been in custody?
Almost 45 days almost tomorrow
And you've been in custody for what case?
for DUI, the third,
Yeah,
which is actually a suicide attempt.
right. Well, I'm sorry for everything you've been through, and it sounds like it's a lot, but if you don't get the help and assistance that you need, realistically, you being out doesn't mean that everything's gonna be okay.
Right,
You gotta still work to get yourself stable.
yes, ma'am. And
You gotta get involved in some mental health treatment.
I've been seeing a counselor consistently for a year now
Uh-huh.
for my depression.
And who's that through?
That's through Clearwater
Uh-huh,
Counseling.
yeah. Well, if there's anything further that you can think of about this sentencing today on the domestic violence, you can let me know.
Okay, well, I do want to let you know something about it, is that, with my suicide attempt had a lot to do with an affair that I had last year. And this is what it all stems from. When I was arrested, the officer told me that, he wasn't taking me to jail. I was going to go to the hospital, and then eventually there'd be a warrant placed out for me. And he would call me, and he did. He called me and told me that the warrant was issued. He said he wasn't going to come looking for me. He said to just turn myself in after the holidays, which I intended to do. And so I was at home sleeping, or trying to sleep, and my wife, out of the blue, turned the light on and tried talking to me, and I really wasn't paying much attention. I had to get up at 3 in the morning and be at work at 4 in the morning. So she ended up taking my covers, snatched those off, and kept talking and talking and talking. And I was just getting frustrated, so I slapped my light off my nightstand, and I went to snatch my covers back. And doing that, I apparently had part of her gown in the covers when I snatched them back. And next thing I know, I looked up, and she was on the other side of the bed on the phone and said, "Oh, I don't feel safe." And I was like, "What? What are you doing?" She was calling the police, and she actually told them on the phone. She's like, "Oh yeah, and by the way, he actually has a warrant out for his arrest," but which we knew because I was gonna turn myself in the next day or whatever day it was after the holidays. And then, after all that happened, I went to jail. I got out 2 days later, and she came and picked me up. We reconciled. Everything was going fine. And we were doing everything that families do. We were watching movies every night. She'd lay with her head in my lap, but while we're watching TV, we went out on dates. We took the kids out. And even my sons even said that they wanted to come and testify if they could. They said, "Dad, we would love to let her know that you guys reconciled and.
Yeah, but the difficulties you had wasn't just the January 1 day.
Excuse
I mean,
me?
that's what you got charged with this case, but the difficulties you've had that have led to the dissension or dissolution of the marriage, it wasn't just about this January 1 day. You had problems and dysfunction, you're having an affair, right?
The affair.
Right.
We've been
But not
together.
physical violence. She said that
No,
too. She said there's never been physical violence before. I get that.
Never,
But
man.
suffice it to say, all hell was breaking loose in your life. I mean, to get to the point where you're going to try to end your life, to get to the point where you're going to try to end your life.
I was hurting two different people at the same time.
Well, right, I get that. You're going to hurt a whole lot more people by taking your life.
Well,
What do you do to your kids? How do they live with that? I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a doctor. And I get what you're saying, that there has not been a physically abusive relationship. I get that. And if we just pick this one incident where you're upset, she's upset, you're both upset, you're trying to sleep, you have to get up, you're woken out of the clear blue. If you take that one moment in time and you go back to it, truly you probably didn't handle it the best way you could have. Maybe she didn't either. But it is what it is. I don't turn that one time into a lifetime of physical abuse. I get that. But then to have this incident where you try to take your life, that takes it to a whole nother level. Not just to take your life, you could have taken the life of someone else on the roadway when you drive off the road and your car flips. You don't know what's going to happen. And all I'm saying is, you got to get to the bottom of all of that to get some stability in your life.
Right.
Because if you don't get to the stability part, this whole issue of whether you guys love each other or don't love each other, that's immaterial.
Right. And at the time, Your Honor, I looked at it like it was a selfless act. I thought I'd be doing everybody a world of good. And then as I
Well, that just shows how distorted your view was.
I started counseling, Your Honor. I mean, consistently. And,
Well, good. I'm glad you have. But you're going to have to need a lot more of it.
I intend to. And I learned a lot. And I learned that it was not a selfless act, but a selfish act. And
right.
But
like, I mean, just think of your kids. Just think of your kids. If you even try to put your boys as a focal point, it just tears their lives apart. And I don't know the end result. But with this case right now, you know, the chances of you guys being divorced, the chances of you reconciling, I don't have all the answers to that. And people have to make their own decisions about what's going on. But it sounds as if, you know, I'm going to be ordering you not to have any contact with Heather. I'm going to be ordering that you not have any contact with Heather. No contact, direct or indirect. No contact at her place of residence, which was yours. No contact with the kids. I mean, your boys are old enough, if there's going to be visitation, that they can go back and forth. What are their ages?
One will be 16, October 29th, and the other one's 17.
Yeah, so they're way old enough. Driving. I'm not going to put it all on Heather, and I'm not going to put it all on you. But if there's a divorce pending, you're going to have to deal with it. I don't know how it's going to work. Over 50% of the married population do get divorced, with kids or without, and they have to make it work. I'm concerned because of the level that you took this when you purposely had your car accident. That's a red flag for anybody, that there's a huge, huge problem. And to pretend that everything's okay right now is wrong, because everything's not okay. And you're due to get out of jail tomorrow, and I don't want there to be a problem.
There won't be.
Your kids are old enough that if they want to contact you, they can contact you. If
Yes,
they want to
ma'am.
see you, they can go see you. But I don't want you at the house on Crawford Lake. I don't want you trying to contact Heather. I don't want you trying to contact, if she works outside the home, I don't know what the situation is. But you
Right.
got to remember that it's absolutely no contact.
Okay.
I give you a 93-day suspended jail sentence. Technically, you've been in custody for 45 days. So 45 days credit for time served, 47 days suspended, or 48, I guess it would be.
Okay.
48 days suspended, 45 days credit for time served. You're technically going to be on probation to us for this case of domestic violence. 1 year probationary period. They're talking about the first time offender program. I'm not opposed to that. And you're right. Your wife did write in and she said there's never been physical abuse in your relationship. But whether you can rationalize in your own head that when you in a frustrated, angry moment grab the sheets and you grab her nightgown with them, you got to know what you're doing at all times. And this never should have happened. It's a $300 fine, $360 fee for probation, $75 crime victims' right fee, $200 court-appointed attorney fee, for a total of $935 on this case. You've got to recognize that I am very, very serious about the no contact. If I find out anything differently, we can address it. But right now, that's the order of the court. No contact at all with Heather King, directly or indirectly. You can't tell your kids, tell mom this. You can't tell your sister, tell mom this. Tell my wife this. No. No contact directly or indirectly. Now, what questions do you have for me, Mr. King?
I guess you pretty much summed it up. Now,
I tried to.
About
With your felony drunk driving case, are you still dealing with your attorney on that?
No.
On the
I don't-
felony case that you just did your 45 days on? Are you going to be on probation for that?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, know that you got to follow it exact because you're being double looked at here by both our court and the circuit court. They're going to want to make sure you follow every requirement that's asked of you, complete successfully. If you violate your probation with either court, you're back in lockup. All right, now do you have any other questions for me, Mr. King?
How long will this be on my record?
Well, it's a first-time offender program, which means that if you complete your probation successfully, it's physically off your record.
Okay.
That means success of your probation in every way.
Okay.
If you drop the ball at all, it's on your record permanently. But think about this. What was the date of your accident?
It was
Ballpark.
November.
Before Thanksgiving,
Yes.
last year.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, picture what you did last November and how close you came to ending your life. And fast forward now, almost a year later, and you're talking about, will this be on my record? A year ago, you would have been dead by your plan. So you have got to recognize your life has to take a change, both in mind, body, and spirit. Because if you don't physically get healthy in every way, the last concern you're going to have is whether this is on your record. Because a year ago, we were talking about whether you would live. Do you get what I mean?
Yes.
Okay, so keep working with your therapist because you need a lot of work to do. You've got a lot of work to do, Mr. Hill. Mr. King, sorry, Mr. King. Okay, that's it, Rodney King, that's it for now. Your probation officer will be in contact with you. They're not going to duplicate everything they're doing at Circuit, but they're going to watch that you are staying squeaky clean. That's it then. Thank you for your courtesy. All right, thank you, Mr. Abuxia.
Good luck, Rodney. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Okay. Okay, you can give me a whistle when that is, oh, that Jerry Likens one, you have the paperwork on? Okay.
All set, Your Honor.
I think so. I was wondering if they might have Mortimer. Give me 1 minute, Mr. Abuxia.
Yes, of course.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Identify yourself if you please.
Jacob Waringa?
All right. And Mr. Waringa, do you have video capacity?
Yeah, I do.
You just have to hit the button that says connect to video.
Can you do it again? I'm sorry, I hit later.
Mr. Waringa, just give me 1 second. I'm talking to somebody else for a minute. Is it Mr. Adam Mortimer at the jail?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mortimer, I'm Judge Sara Smolenski, and I have you in front of me on a probation violation when you had your domestic violence case. Do you remember the case?
Yes.
For some reason, we had trouble hooking up with the Kent County Jail this morning. So your case was set this morning at 8:15, and your probation officer, I believe it was Angela DeWinter, was here at the court.
Nicole Brown?
Oh, Nicole Brown, my apologies, wrong probation officer. Yeah, Nicole Brown. And we had originally scheduled your case for a hearing of whether you were in violation of your probation or not. And the whole issue, I don't have the file right now. How long were you going to be in custody?
I don't know yet, Your Honor. I have not been to court yet.
Is it a felony?
Yes,
So you'll have an attorney on that.
yes.
What they were talking about with your probation violation with us is still having contact with Tammy Mortimer when you were not supposed to. That was the main area that they claimed you were in violation. Does that ring a bell to you?
Yes, it does.
With a probation violation, it's like a pass-fail. You either pass probation or you fail. Little or big, doesn't matter. They indicated that you had a new address that changed and we never got the new address. Could have led to some of the problems of connection, I don't know. But the main violation was not being ordered not to have any contact with Tammy and having contact with her. That was the allegation. You can either admit it or deny it. If you admit it, I tell you the penalty. If you deny it, you have a right to have a hearing. Because you're in custody right now on another matter, it kind of is overlapping. What I do isn't going to be adding more to whatever you're already doing. And I don't know how long you're going to be in or what's going to happen on that. And you definitely could talk to that attorney about this case if you wanted to, or you could talk to a separate attorney about this case, about whether you violated your probation or you did not. That's really what we're looking at.
Well,
Can you
I
think
did-
of any questions that you have for me?
No, Your Honor, but I did have contact with my mom. Tammy.
So you're wanting to admit responsibility to having contact with your mom, Tammy, even though you knew you weren't supposed to go to her house or try to have contact with her.
Yes.
What was I'll call it desperate. I don't know if desperate is the word. What was the desperate position, if that's what it was, that you found yourself to be in? Why did you have to go to your mom's? Was it to get stuff?
Yeah, my clothes were there.
Okay,
Everything that I own was there. I did not call the police to have them come out so I could grab my stuff. I just went there on my own behalf.
okay. How long have you been in custody right now?
About 65 days.
65?
Yes, Your Honor.
And has that pretty much all been on that felony drug charges that you have?
Yes.
Okay. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna terminate your probation. I appreciate the fact that you're honest about telling me what happened when you went to your mom's. I don't know if when we talked before, I ever said, if you need anything, call a police and get an escort. I almost always say that. I say, get a police escort if you've got to go pick up your clothes, your underwear, your toiletries, your duffel bag of stuff, because I'm always ordering people to be away from their home. So when I say that, I say, if you've got to get something. I had a guy the other day, he had to pick up the car that was in the driveway. I said, you have to have a police escort to go pick up that car because you physically can't go to that address even to get the car. And your point isn't trying to make trouble. You're there to pick up your stuff, but there's a different way to do it than how you handled it. Are you with me?
Yes, I am.
Do you remember me ever telling you anything about getting a police escort?
I do not, Your Honor, but you might have.
Okay, I appreciate that. Okay, what I'm gonna do is say, I'm giving you credit for time served with the 65 days you've done on your separate matter. And I don't mean to be funny, but your other case is a much bigger fish in your frying pan than what I've got here. You got a much bigger fish in your frying pan with those felony cases or whatever it is. You deal with your attorney on that through circuit court. I'm gonna terminate your probation on our court case. The monies are still owed. And I'm not entirely positive, but I think it's about $600 that you owe. I don't have the exact number, but talk with your other attorney about whether there's any other way to handle the monies in our court other than just setting up a payment plan. Mr. Mortimer, can you think of any other questions you have for me?
I do not, Your Honor.
Okay, then I appreciate our friends at the jail helping us out with getting you connected. It was later than we expected, but I'm glad to be able to see you today. Especially if you remember last time I wanted to see you before the 13th. Well, I wasn't sure exactly, this week how it was going to go, so we wanted to try to see you as soon as we could. All right, thank you for your courtesy.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, is that Mr. Ashbrook having the sandwich?
Sorry about that, it was break.
No, that's all right. I'm not worried. I just want to know who I'm talking to. So
Yeah,
your
that's me.
attorney is Mr. McInerney, and he's part of our Zoom. Mr. McInerney, can you hear me?
I can, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning. It sounds like Mr. Ashbrook is at his job right now, taking a break to do this Zoom.
Yes,
And this was, yep. And this was the case D20-02400. And it had to do with the charge that was the malicious destruction of property over 1,000. And we're talking about an incident from this summer, August 30th. Now almost a month and a half ago. They're talking about the vehicle owned by this Carmen Bessie. Today was actually the probable cause conference, Mr. McInerney. And I'm not 100% sure whether you've had a chance to talk to the prosecutor recently, but it sounded like the recommendation from the pre-exam conference was if your client decided to plead over 200, under 1,000 with restitution, they'd make it a misdemeanor and the felony would get dismissed. Was that your understanding, Mr. McInerney?
it was, Your Honor.
Did you have a chance to talk to Mr. Ashbrook about it, to know how he was thinking about what to do?
I haven't.
Okay,
Briefly this
let's-
morning, it's my client's intention to waive the prelim.
Okay, to continue discussions at the circuit court on the whole matter?
Yes. Your
Okay.
Honor.
So, Mr. Ashbrook, if you waive your preliminary exam today, there's no testimony in front of me. And honestly, I just read what was on the original complaint. I didn't know it was an automobile until I read it said vehicle. I don't know who Carmen Bessie is. I don't know the details at all. But I don't hear anything about the case and I'm done with it. The case moves on to circuit court, you get a totally different judge. And then you and Mr. McInerney would still continue to talk about the case and discuss it at the circuit court level. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay, there's 2 documents that we're going to be emailing to Mr. McInerney. One is called the waiver of the preliminary exam, like what we just talked about. 2 is the waiver of the circuit court arraignment. So it lets me say not guilty on your behalf as this case moves on to circuit court. This is a 5-year felony that gets moved to circuit court. We just say not guilty, and you and your attorney would continue discussing and negotiating the case with the prosecutor. Do you understand?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Ashbrook, in this COVID world that we're living in, with us doing stuff by Zoom, and we're getting a lot done, of course, but instead of sending you the paperwork, if you were physically here with me in court, I'd have you sign it. But because you're not physically here with me, and neither are you with your attorney, we just send the documentation to your attorney for him to sign on your behalf, assuming you give him authority for just those 2 documents I described, the waiver of the preliminary exam and the waiver of the circuit court arraignment. Do you give him a permission to do that?
Yes.
Now, Mr. McInerney, can you think of any other questions that you have at all about any of this?
No, Your Honor. However, based on other courts, I have no objection, since we have a record here of you signing on behalf of both of us.
Oh, I get that. I appreciate you saying that. And for some reason, different courts might be doing it differently. I've not started taking that on. It's not
Okay.
inconvenient for us to just email it to you. And do you
Sure.
already have his email information, Amanda? So my clerk, Amanda Dubé, will just email it to you, Mr. McInerney, and we'll take care of it that way. I
Very
would
good.
just say to you, Mr. Ashbrook, and I appreciate that anyways, Mr. McInerney, I know it was meant only as a help. Mr. Ashbrook, I would just tell you, stay in contact with Mr. McInerney. Within the next 6 weeks or so, you're going to get a new data set up, a date similar to this, probably by Zoom.
Okay.
But just, you still talk to Mr. McInerney because he'll let you know what's going on because he's zealously representing you in this matter. Okay?
For the.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Ashcroft, do you give me authority
Ashbrook.
in your name?
Mr. Ashbrook, you
Yes.
said yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ashbrook.
Yep.
For this.
And it's okay for him to sign on your behalf, Chris Ashbrook, okay?
Yes.
All right, thanks a lot. It'll just be those 2 documents, and then you guys will talk about
Right.
when the new date comes. Just stay in contact with him. And it's natural that you might have some questions that come up, Mr. Ashbrook. Just call Mr. McInerney if you have those questions. I mean, you know, it's like
Okay.
being at the doctor. You don't always hear everything or remember everything they told you, and you want to ask something else. Just make a note of it so you can talk to them about it later, because it's natural that stuff comes up before
Right.
your next court date or whatever. And don't have any contact with this Besser person or whoever it is. Don't have
I
any
do not
contact,
plan to.
just so you know. Okay,
Yep.
Mr. McInerney, thanks for zooming in today. Thank you, Mr. Ashbrook.
Thank you, Your
Thank you,
Honor.
Your Honor.
Okay, appreciate it. We're adjourned.